So, I kind of decided just to go into this, the challenge that was presented to the congregation at my church about a short 5-ish minute video on our faith journey, our testimony. And it's really intimidating to try to fit it all into 5 minutes. So if you have any questions or want to know anything more about some of the key points, I'd be more than happy to talk about it, because I feel like I've had a very wide, educated, and gentle faith path. I was raised Catholic. All my family is still Catholic. I have nothing against the Catholic religion. I think that being Catholic made me view church as more of kind of like a chore as a kid, and I hope no one takes that in a negative way. But I mean, I know it was inconvenient at times to be dropped off at 9 when sermon wasn't until after. Our church had kids' bulletins with like stories and coloring pages for the younger kids, because it's kind of hard to keep the attention span of a child in sermon. And I love my roots of growing up Catholic. But I moved out to Bowling Green, which I think was like the biggest part of my faith journey. And a lot of that journey in Bowling Green is very much still a part of, even more so a part of me today. I started going to Crew at the university, Campus Crusaders for Christ. I started going to Crew. And it was kind of more of like a party sermon thing, but there was still a lot of sermon going on with it. And there was just a lot of connectivity. Like, it was a banquet hall full of like-minded people the same age as me, going through the vast majority of life stuff that happens in your early 20s. And it was entertaining, and it was driven, and everybody was just so wholehearted. And I met so many wonderful people at Crew, and I got more involved with it, and I started hanging out with a lot of very quality people. And then I fell out of faith for a very long time. And it wasn't until all of the things that were going on in my life that were the cause of me turning away from faith, lots of things, a bad relationship, horrible life choices, a lot of suffer and struggle that was unnecessary, and I was handling it myself. I took it in my own hands, and that is never a beneficial thing. And I made it through a lot of really tough things, but I was definitely empty for it. Like, if I had to say a time in my life where I felt like I stubbornly took control for myself, nothing good was really going on in those years. So big change happened, and I stopped associating with certain people, and I removed myself and my daughter from a terrible relationship. And I started kind of like a brand new path I've never been down before, and I started going to church with my Uncle Frank and Aunt Judy at Maranatha in Green, and I loved it. Sage loved it. Their children's ministry was awesome. They were a big church, but with a small church feel. And then I realized that my friend Megan from my childhood actually goes there too, so that was awesome. So I transitioned really quickly into, I'm going with my aunt and uncle, to now I'm going on my own, and I, happen to have a partner in my faith at that church. And things happened, and Megan left the church, and I moved, and other things happened, and nobody there made me feel unwelcome, but I definitely fell back off. And funny enough, when I think about the years where I fell back out of that, I was back in a relationship that wasn't good for me, and I was surviving life again, and I was pushing and pushing and pushing and forcing and pushing and forcing and pushing. And I don't think I even realized that I was spiraling back out of control. And at the time, I definitely didn't think faith was the answer, and I didn't think that what was happening could be better if I, was living more in the faith-centered life choices than the me-centered life choices. And then things kind of calmed back down. Again, I survived through some stuff, and I found a church in Worcester called Grace. And they were like the same format as Maranatha. They were a big church with a little feel, with a great kids ministry that Sage loved, and I started going like clockwork on a regular basis because I needed that to fill my cup. Like, I got to a place where I had my cup again, and it may have been empty at the time, and I knew exactly what I wanted to fill it with. And I filled it with faith. And that was probably the biggest turning point that launched to where I am now. Because I haven't lost that faith since then. So it started in Worcester at Grace, and then I started dating my fiance. One of the very first things that is a memory of our relationship is that we just kind of knew that it was God's timing. It was God's timing that crossed our paths over and over and over. Like, every weave was woven by the Lord, and where we got to and where we were headed, we just know. We just knew. It was the most comforting and gracious feeling I've ever had. And our families blended really well. Faith was very, very important to remain a part of my life at that point, and it had been very, very important to always be a part of his up to that point. And quite honestly, it had just begun to be one of those things where I knew that it may seem like a silly thing, but I didn't want to personally associate with people who looked down on or were like verbally disagree with my faith at the time. Because I know that every time I'd let someone like that into my life, that's when my life had spiraled. So it was so amazing to know that I was about to be sharing my life with someone who felt like faith was as important to them as it was to me, or more important. And I was like, I don't want faith to ever be less important to me than it is right now. And I feel like with him, faith will only be more and more and more important to the both of us and our family as a whole. And that brought me to First Christian Church. And my favorite song of like all time, the one that I bawled my eyes out to when I first started going to church at Maranatha, that has just stuck with me, and like literally every time I hear it, it gives me goosebumps, is Spirit of the Living God. And one of the lyrics in that song that really just really, really, really hits me in my tears spot, I guess, is the lyric where it says, "He changes what we see, he changes what we seek." And I don't think there could be any truer words than that. So, changes what you see, changes what you seek. It was the verse that truly made me believe that the choices I make are simple. They can either be with faith or not. And when they're with faith, they never go wrong. And I'm so blessed for that. I'm really trying not to cry. And then I am where I am today. In a place where I have 6 beautiful children who love God so genuinely. And a fiance who I work so well with in life because we both love from the same source, and I just couldn't imagine it being any better than this, and I know I would never have gotten here without it. So that is my faith journey, and it took a lot more than 5 minutes. It's 17, but if you made it to the end, I am more than willing to spark up conversations, because it is nothing but beautiful to discuss and share and live a faith-focused life. You won't find this kind of happiness any other way in anything. So I managed to not actually cry, which is great because I did my makeup right before I filmed this. But yeah, I'll never stray, because there's just nothing better than staying faith focused.